trust often erodes under stress. Let's say you're in a relationship with a life partner. During times of stress, both people will behave in reactive ways. And those reactive behaviors can erode trust between the two people. The same is true in our relationship with ourselves. And maybe the reason I'm thinking about this issue right now is that I happen to be in a period of just like a pile up of life stresses. And I've been noticing that stress is putting a strain on my relationship with myself. Welcome to How to Trust Yourself, the podcast for anyone who's done with the endless second guessing and ready to tune in to your inner guidance. I'm Anna Holtzman, and I get that feeling of trudging through life like you're wading through mud, trying to figure out which way to go. In my 20s, I spent more time asking what should I do with my life than writing about crushes or bad dates in my journal. I've tried on a lot of answers: architecture, publishing, editing reality TV for a decade, and finally landing on therapy and coaching, helping people like you connect with your purpose. But here's the thing I've learned through all those twists and turns. Trusting yourself is the key to moving forward, even when the path feels messy. So if you're ready to stop doubting yourself and start listening to your gut, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, dear listener. Today, I want to talk about something that is very relevant to this podcast, which is how to build trust with yourself or with a partner, because we're going to use that as a point of reference. But I figured on a podcast called How to Trust Yourself, it probably would make sense to record an episode about some skills and tools for how to trust yourself. And the way that I think about this is trust is a relationship. Trust is built through relationship. If you think about trusting a friend or a family member or a partner or a coworker or anyone else that you're in contact with, trust is not something that is automatic. It is built through collaborative interactions. Trust is not something that is static. It needs to be nurtured in order to be maintained over time. You can experience breaches in trust, and those breaches can then be repaired if both parties put the intention into it. And the same is true when it comes to self-trust, which is trust in the relationship between you and you. And I think it can really help to use interpersonal relationships as a reference point when we're learning how to trust ourselves, because we tend to have a better handle on what makes another person trustworthy and how to establish trust between yourself and another person. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through a list of various things that can come up in your relationship between you and you that can erode self-trust. And then what are some of the ways that we can repair that self-trust? And we'll go through them by using interpersonal relationships as a comparison point. And what I'll start off by saying is that trust often erodes under stress. You know, when let's say you're in a relationship with a life partner, during times of stress, both people will behave in reactive ways. And those reactive behaviors can erode stress, or rather can erode trust between the two people. The same is true in our relationship with ourself, and maybe the reason I'm thinking about this issue right now of self-trust is that I happen to be in a period of just like a pile up of life stresses. I don't want to bore you with it because I've already talked about this stuff on the podcast, but we had a pipe burst recently during a big snowstorm, and it just has set off a cascade of stress, stress, garden variety stuff that pops up in life. And I've been noticing that that stress is putting a strain on my relationship with myself. And some of these um, trust issues, these situations or behaviors or patterns that can erode trust, have been coming up in my own relationship with myself and my self-trust. And I'm having to navigate that. So here is an incomplete list in no particular order of pretty common things that can come up in interpersonal relationships and in your self relationship that can interrupt or erode trust. The first that I want to start with is having rigid standards for earning trust. So what do I mean by this? So like I'll use my husband and I as an example of an interpersonal relationship just so we can talk about some actual real people. So if I held really tight, rigid, perfectionistic and controlling standards for how my husband needed to earn my trust, for example, if I had the attitude that he can never mess up or never say the wrong thing, or, if I already told you that that bothered me and you're doing it again, like if I told you that when you change channels in the middle of a show that I'm watching, like that I really hate that, but even though you know that I hate that, you're doing it again. And now I can't trust you and I can never trust you, right? If I hold those kind of rigid, controlling standards for trust that don't leave any leeway for being a human being who forgets things sometimes or who have reflexes that might annoy me or, it's just like imperfect and messy like I am and like we all are. If I don't have any room for that in my standards for trust, then those very rigid standards that I'm applying to earning my trust will actually erode trust between us because it'll make my husband feel like he's walking on eggshells all the time and he can't trust me because I'm going to like freak out at him over any small infraction. And then, and that'll cause him to probably do some untrustworthy behaviors because he feels so stressed. And it also prevents me from developing trust with anybody because nobody can live up to those kind of rigid, perfectionistic standards. So, how can this show up when it comes to building self trust? So, when I am stressed and my nerves are fried and I'm kind of, like my bandwidth is low, I can sometimes apply some very rigid standards to myself in terms of earning my own self-trust. I'll have thoughts like, if I make any kind of mistake, let's say I didn't pay the heating bill on time and, now we're getting a fine. And then I might say to myself, oh my God, I can never trust you. You screwed this up. You always screw things up. I can't trust somebody who messes up like this. Well, then I'm going to be walking around on eggshells around myself. And I'm probably going to start making a lot of other mistakes because I'll be so stressed out and freaked out that I'm going to start, you know, enacting unhealthy coping behaviors, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to be scared of myself. I'm not the part of me that messed up is not going to trust the drill sergeant part of me, and the drill sergeant part of me can't ever trust the human side of me because that side of me is never going to be perfect. So the antidote to that, of course, easier said than done, is just making some space for our own humanity, reminding ourselves that everybody messes up sometimes. Everybody forgets things sometimes. Everybody lets something fall through the cracks now and then. And that doesn't make everybody in the world untrustworthy all of the time, right? So if I forget something or let something slip through the cracks, that doesn't mean I can't trust myself. Creating a little space for my own humanity will help me to rebuild that trust with myself. That is my number one, having rigid standards for trust versus creating space to be human. Number two is not sharing what you're really feeling. So, how can this show up in an interpersonal relationship? Let's take my husband and I as an example again. So, if I'm feeling really sad about something, or more likely, really mad about something, and, let's say I'm mad at him about something, but I don't want to interrupt the flow of things and I don't want to rock the boat. So I'm holding it in and I'm keeping it in and I'm bottling it up and I'm holding it all inside and I'm not sharing what I'm really feeling. I might think that I'm doing that to maintain trust between us, because I might think, well, he's never going to trust me if I show him my anger, right? But by not sharing what I'm really feeling, it's going to ooze out the seams of me anyway. He's going to sense and know that something's off, right? We all know. And he's not going to be able to trust me. And if I don't share what's really going on for me, how can I ever like if I'm angry at him about something, how can I ever have a repair of that trust with him so that I can trust him again if I don't express in a constructive, clear way what's going on for me? How can we build mutual understanding without me sharing openly and constructively what's truly going on inside and what I'm feeling? So, how can this show up in the realm of self trust? It might sound silly because I am me, right? I'm one person. I'm certainly privy to the feelings that I'm feeling, but I'm sure you can relate to this, which is that there are plenty of times, and especially, if I'm going through some kind of stress, when I just don't want to deal with feelings that feel difficult. I don't want to deal with feeling sad. I don't want to deal with feeling angry. I don't want to deal with feeling scared. And so I will, not on purpose, but unconsciously compartmentalize my feelings internally and hide them from myself, stuff them into a little corner, maybe into my tight shoulders, right? And I will just resist opening up to myself with those feelings. I will hold it in. I will bottle it up. I will ignore it and push it away until things start to feel really uncomfortable. They could feel uncomfortable physically in my tight neck and shoulders. And I could just start feeling very disconnected from myself. Like I don't even know myself. I can't trust myself. And that's when I know that, just like in the realm of my relationship with my husband, when it comes to my relationship with myself, we need to sit down and have a conversation. As much as I don't want to deal with it, not dealing with it creates more problems in the long run. So I'm going to need to sit down eventually and have a conversation with myself. And I like to do that through journaling, but sometimes I do it like really just in like having a dialogue inside my own head, speaking, speaking from different parts of myself in dialogue with each other, asking each other what's going on and listening. And as much as I resist it, when I finally sit down to do it, things start to soften. I start to feel reconnected with myself. I'm having an honest conversation with myself. That's when I start to feel like I can trust myself again. So the first one was rigid standards for trust. Second one is not sharing what you're really feeling. Number 3 is not listening or not holding space for the other person's feelings or for your other part's feelings. See, this is related to there's not sharing what you're feeling, and then there's not listening to what you're feeling. How can this show up in a two-person relationship? Imagine that I decide I am going to open up with my husband and be vulnerable with him, and I'm going to share with him how I'm feeling like, honey, I haven't wanted to bother you with this, but I'm just feeling really, really sad about something, and I just need to share this and to open up about it. Now, my husband's great at tending to me when I share my feelings, so he would never actually do this. Um, but, if he were to say, "Ugh, I'm so busy with my own shit right now, I don't have space for your feelings. I just can't handle it. Just leave me alone. I'm so stressed out. You're making me even more stressed. I just can't deal. I can't listen. I can't sit with your feelings right now." That would feel really harsh for me. I wouldn't feel safe around him in that interaction. And I would feel like, gosh, I don't know if I can really trust him. Why would I ever open up to him again if this is how he's going to respond to me? Again, that is not my husband's vibe. He's a great listener. I love him. um, but how can this show up in our relationship with ourself? Similar to what I was talking about before, that compartmentalizing, it's just the other half of it. You know, half of that compartmentalization is that I don't really want to listen to my own feelings. I don't want to hold space for them. I don't want to feel, because I'm afraid I'll feel overwhelmed by them. But the longer I spend not listening to myself, the more unruly my feelings become because they have nowhere to go and they're being bottled up. And while it feels scary to me to take the time to sit down with them and I'm afraid I'll feel overwhelmed by them, it's actually the opposite is true. Not listening to my own feelings creates a situation of buildup and then overwhelm and feeling like I can't handle it. When I actually do sit down and listen and just make space for it, I don't need to solve the feelings. I don't need to make them go away. Just like, with the other person in the relationship, if my husband shares his feelings with me, I don't need to solve his feelings. I don't need to make them go away. He just needs me to listen and to sit with him. And that's exactly what I need from myself. I just need to be listened to by my own self. And that starts to ease the tension and rebuild the trust between me and me. So we had rigid standards of trust. We had not sharing what you're feeling. We had not listening to what you're feeling. And the fourth one is never initiating the check-in, never initiating the conversation, the communication. So again, this is related to the last two, but how can this show up in a two-person relationship? It's like if one person in the relationship, whether it's myself or my husband, is always the one to initiate a check-in like, "Oh, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Let's check in." And then the other person never initiates, that imbalance will erode trust over time. How this shows up in the self relationship is just that you're never initiating the check in with yourself. You're never making time to sit down and journal. You're never making time to go on a walk and have a conversation with yourself. Never making time to just hang out with yourself, spend some time with yourself, check in. And that never initiating erodes trust over time. So, what is the antidote to that? Well, we don't want to have those rigid standards with ourselves, right? Because that also erodes trust. So, we don't want to flagellate ourselves and say, you never initiate. You really screwed up. I can never trust you again. No, it's not going to be helpful. But we can just keep our awareness open and say, oh, okay, I guess I haven't been initiating that check in with myself for a while. When can I make some time? When can I make 5 minutes to just sit with myself? Doesn't have to be a big deal. We don't have to go over every feeling and thought and whatever that has been unaddressed for the last 6 months. Let's just make 5 minutes to check in and say hi, say hello to myself. Let myself know that, yes, I might be busy and overwhelmed and stressed out about other things, but I care and I'm here. The next one is not attuning to yourself. This can look like rushing yourself, trying to control yourself. And how this can show up in a relationship with two people is, when one partner is always rushing the other, like, come on, we got to go. Or trying to control them, like, you need to do it this way, even though that makes you not happy, but it needs to be done this way. Not attuning to the other partner's needs and style and need for time and breathing space. And it's so common that we do this to ourselves. We rush ourselves. We get impatient with ourselves. We tell ourselves to just get over it already instead of giving ourselves the time to breathe, to feel, to integrate. We can be controlling with ourselves, like, why are you doing it that way? You should be doing it this way. When really doing it the other way just feels better to you, right? So the invitation here is to attune to yourself. Make your own emotions and needs important to you, just like you would with someone that you cherish. When you're spending time with someone that you cherish, you might sometimes rush them and then you see how it's impacting them and how it's stressing them out and making them miserable. And then you'll make an adjustment. Oh, sorry, I was rushing you. Let's take our time. I said that we had to do it this way, but how do you want to do it? Let's let's make sure this works for both of us, right? And so we can do that with ourselves too. We can check in with ourselves like, oh, I notice that I'm feeling rushed. Let's slow this down. Let's create some breathing room. I notice that doing it the way I think I'm supposed to be doing it just feels like shit to me. How do I actually want to be doing this? What method of doing this thing would feel good to me? And the next common way that we erode trust with ourselves is by relying only on you. What does this mean? First, I'll illustrate how this can show up in an interpersonal relationship. Imagine that your partner relies only on you for their emotional support. They don't talk to a therapist or a coach. They don't share their feelings with other friends or family members. They only rely on you. All of their emotional processing gets dumped on you, right? We all want to be there for the people that we love, but when you are the only person who the person you love is relying on, it can feel burdensome, it can feel overwhelming, it can feel suffocating, and they might start to feel untrustworthy to you because they're overburdening you. How does this show up in our self relationship? Quite similarly, when you are only relying on yourself for support, or maybe on yourself in ChatGPT for support. I mean, I, I'm mining from my own experience here. That's why I'm laughing about it. Right? If we're relying only on ourself or only on ourself and the internet for emotional support, and we're not reaching out to friends, we're not reaching out to a therapist or coach, we're not reaching out to family members or a partner or anyone else besides ourselves, we're just being totally self-reliant in our emotional life. That is a recipe for meltdown, for overwhelm, for feeling so overburdened with holding your entire emotional well-being alone that it will erode trust with yourself. And so the way out of this, the way to repair this is you don't have to judge yourself or berate yourself for doing this. I think we all get caught in these loops of self-reliance sometimes, over self-reliance. But just just take one step to reach out. Call one friend. Write one person you feel really safe with a text message and ask if they're open to chat. Schedule a session with a therapist or coach. It doesn't have to be any specific one of these things. Just reach out to someone in some way who you feel safe with and supported by. It's as simple as that. And finally, the thing that I want to conclude with is a repetition of the very same thing that I started with, which is that rigid perfectionistic standards for earning trust can actually erode trust. And the reason I wanted to both start with that and end with that is that when we're stressed and our bandwidth is low, and we hear about all these different ways in which we might be screwing up at trusting ourselves, we can then get mad at ourselves about that and berate ourselves about that and hold these standards of rigidity and perfection over our own heads in terms of how we think we are effing up at self-trust. And so what I want to bookend this with is holding these rigid standards for ourselves will not build trust. It will only erode it. And so if you find yourself in any of the patterns that I named earlier, it's okay. It's okay. Cut yourself some slack, cut yourself a break. I'm finding myself in these patterns too. And this is the stuff that I support other people with, that I talk about all the time, that I teach about. And I'm human. And so I get caught up. I mean, how else would I know about these patterns? It's not only from working with other people, it's from my firsthand lived experience. So we all get caught up in these patterns. And I encourage us all to cut ourselves some slack, give ourselves a break, and let ourselves rebuild trust without throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I hope that you have found something helpful and supportive and gentle in what I've shared here today. I have so much faith and belief in you. I have so much faith and belief in us. And if you would like to work with someone who will walk alongside you as you are rebuilding self-trust, reach out. This is the work that I do. You can contact me at my website, annaholtzman.com, on my email, anna@annaholtzman.com. And I love when people send me little voice notes on Instagram. I'm there at Anna_Holtzman. Sending lots of love your way, and I look forward to checking in with you next week. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor. Hit that follow button so you don't miss a thing, and leave a rating or review. It helps more people find this show, and honestly, it makes my day. And if you're looking for more ways to trust yourself and start listening to that gut instinct of yours, come hang out with me on Instagram at Anna_Holtzman. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, trust yourself. You've got this.